everybody? The real sound of H-Town, 97.9 The Vox. Young Jas with the juice here tonight with you. Of course, you know I'm on 7 to 11 p.m., but today we're doing a very special segment. We're actually bringing this back because we did this earlier in the year as well, last year. So basically, you guys came out, voted in November, but the work truly begins now because it's time that we hold all of these elected officials accountable for all the things we voted them into office for. So we are here to tap back in and get the truth about politics. And today, look, this is part 2. So today our main focus is we're talking about important pieces of legislation that are impacting our community. And we're also going to talk about voter suppression. So before we get started here, I got a couple special guests here, experts on the topic that are going to help me break all of this stuff down because look, we want to make this fun, informative, and digestible for everybody. Because look, I'm like y'all, sometimes I don't know what's going on. So I got my experts here to help us. First, we got my man, Ray Shackelford. What's up, Ray? Welcome, Ray, to the live stream. What's up, Ray? Let everybody know what organization you are coming from to today.
What's going on, Young Jas? Yes, my name is Ray Shackelford. I am the national president of the National Urban Young Professionals. We are a 21 to 40 age volunteer auxiliary that supports the National Urban League and its more than 90 affiliates across the country through volunteerism, advocacy, fundraising, and developing our members to lead not just within the movement of the Urban League, but within the broader community.
Let them know, Ray. We got a president in the building with us today, so you know we are official. We're going to talk about these elected officials. And next up, special guest, my girl, Shekira Dennis. What's up, girl? Shekira, welcome to the live stream, too. Introduce yourself and let them know where you're coming from, too.
Hi, Jas. So good to be back with you. I'm Shekira Dennis. I'm a political strategist and co-founder of Next Wave Strategies, a political strategy and public engagement firm right here in Houston.
And Miss Shekira Dennis is not the only co-founder entering the chat today. Last but not least, we had us hanging on a cliff earlier today. My man Cliff Albright is here as well. Cliff, introduce yourself too. And your background is, I love the decor back there. I just had to include that.
That's all my wife. I can't take credit for any of that. I'm Cliff, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. We do work in 15 states across the country. We're a power building organization. Excited to now be in Texas as of a couple of months ago. They say y'all do things bigger in Texas, so we'll see what's up.
Welcome to Texas and welcome to H-Town too, Cliff. That's exciting. Okay, so we're going to get right into it, guys. Starting off, first question is for Miss Shekira, but all the questions are open to everybody, so feel free to chime in, guys, whenever you like. So first thing is, what are the key elements of HB 6/SB 7? Like, what does that even mean?
Yes, so our legislature is comprised of two bodies, the House and the Senate. And so both pieces of legislation are pretty much synonymous in nature, right? They're both very restrictive. So House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 7. And so what both of these laws do is that they actually restrict voting hours, right? It does away with drive-through voting. And it also loosens the restrictions around poll watchers, which essentially leaves voter intimidation tactics open. Our Texas legislature is no stranger to these type of regressive laws, and we have to do everything in our power to combat them. House Bill 6 is currently being heard, on the House floor today. Right. And so folks are calling their legislators. Advocacy groups have been on the ground. Grassroots organizations have been engaging voters across the state of Texas to get them engaged in this process. And we know exactly what happens when we come out, to vote in record numbers. And oftentimes it's unfortunate that this is the byproduct of our participation in this process.
Absolutely. You guys want to add anything else to that too?
Yeah, I was going to say that, when you think about the historic numbers we were able to have, specifically here in Harris County, in terms of election turnout, and really just across the state, these are a direct result of that success. And, these are things that are going to impact many of our viewers that are watching this today. And that, Radio 1 97.9 Vox reaches out to consistently, because you're talking about people that in some instances have disabilities, or maybe they have some type of comorbidity that makes them have greater likelihood to contract something like COVID, which is why we had, drive-through voting, an extension of the curbside voting. Those types of things were instituted to enable more people from the community to have access to vote safely. When you look at the voting hours, we typically have sometimes very long lines in Harris County. And with them cutting down on hours and even potentially the early voting period, just think about the type of impact that's going to have in discouraging people from voting. And I think one of the key things, which it really is just, well, all of it's nonsense, but what Shekira mentioned about them trying to intimidate voters, they are now trying to institute something where they can record you while you're voting in the polls. And let's say somebody has a disability and you want to help them, you have to record the disability that they have, and they can record you helping them. And so it's like, why would you do these types? There's no logical reason to do it. But again, it's just a voter intimidation tactic. These are some of the things they're trying to do. And so it's very discouraging. And it's something that we all have been fighting against, especially, Cliff and Shekira. Shekira just drove back from Austin. So we thank her for everything she's doing.
And so what is the current status of these bills, guys? Because I know, Shekira, you said they're voting on one of them today.
They're hearing it on the floor today, which is why folks are encouraged, to call their legislators. Everyone has a vote and a voice. And so essentially there's 150 representatives on the House side and 31 senators, which represent the entire state of Texas. And so we've got an opportunity. Folks have got, to reach out to the legislators and let them know that they're vehemently opposed to House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 7. And Cliff has been doing some amazing work on the ground. Black Voters Matter, came here and literally hit the ground running, and they're no stranger, to this work, having really taken the bull by the horns out in Georgia and really led the conversation, the activations on the ground there. So we're happy to have him in partnership, here in Texas, and to think about more creative and collaborative ways to really, combat this harmful legislation.
So what can the community, I'll direct this one to Cliff, but of course, everybody is free to chime in and answer. What can the community do to help at this point?
Yeah, the first thing we always talk about the community can do, first and foremost, is believe, right? To believe that we have the power to change all this, to believe that we got the power to stop this bill, even as they're talking about it on the House floor tonight, to believe that we've got the power to stop this bill, even if they pass it, to believe that we got the power to repeal the bill, because there ain't never been a law that's been passed that can't be unpassed, right? So, but we got to believe that we got that power. And then we got to believe that no matter what they do, whether they pass it or not, whether they repeal it or not, what we're going to do is that we're going to come out and beat them, which is ultimately why they're doing this to begin with. They're doing it because they're afraid of us, right? They're doing it because you don't cheat when you're winning. Right? You playing spades, when do you cheat? When do you renege in spades? You renege when you lose it. That's what they're doing. They're losing and they're scared and they're cheating. And so first and foremost, we got to believe that we got the power to overcome all this. After that, what we got to do is get connected to one of these organizations on this call right now, get connected to some other organization, but we got to be connected to each other and connected to organizations. We got a way that you could get connected to us. You can just text the word FIGHT, FIGHT, to 797979, and that'll get you connected with us so that when we send out the actions, whether it's calling members or calling corporations, because that's the part that we'll talk about in a minute, whatever the action is, you got to get connected to somebody so that we can take that action together in unity.
So do we need to
I was going to say.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
No, you go ahead, add it on. This will be my next one.
Well, first, clearly we can't have Cliff as a spades partner because you never renege. That's a no-no. I can't play with you. But I was going to say that, people need to be calling the governor. I know we've been scrolling it, calling the lieutenant governor. These people represent everybody in the state of Texas. Whether you voted for them or not, they still represent you, and they still need to be responsive to your concerns. And at the end of the day, this is going to impact communities of color, Black and brown people, disabled people, seniors, elders from our communities the most, some of the most disadvantaged people. And one of the things I forgot to mention is that they potentially would remove election resources from a lot of the urban cores of the state of Texas and move it to the suburbs. So again, who does that impact? Black and brown people, and gives us less equipment to vote with. Because if you look at how we are constructed in the state of Texas, the urban cores is where the majority of our Black and brown people and the majority of, honestly, when you look at the Democratic voting bloc. And so this is a power play by Republicans, like Cliff said, where they have lost and now they want to take their ball and go home. But, we're not having that.
We not having that. No. And I saw you guys. I wanted to just confirm, Cliff, you said that they can text the word fight to 797979.
That's right. That's right.
And what would that help them join into?
That'll get them connected to our texting list so that when we have updates or when some of our partners have updates, it might be an NAACP update, it might be Black Women's PAC update. But when we send out updates around the types of actions that people can take, then that way people can be able to get those messages on the cell phones and then get right to it.
That's the kind of club I need to be going to. I like it, Cliff. Thank you for that. And also, during the live stream, guys, we also have a little scrolling, the number for the governor. You can also call. I saw it up there before. There we go. You can also call the governor at 512-463-2000 to oppose these bills as well. Now, we're going to move on to the next question, too, for the entire crew. Is there litigation pending?
There's been conversations from...
Go ahead, Ms. Shekira, go ahead.
We're like head-on collision. But no, there's been proposed litigation from national advocacy groups and organizations who have been closely monitoring these types of progressive pieces of legislation, not just in Texas, but across the country. Essentially, I know the NAACP Legal Defense Fund is on standby and actively watching these movements as well, from my understanding. And so I expect there, to be litigation should these pieces of legislation advance to the governor's desk and are essentially signed into law. And like Cliff said, there's always something that we can do, even on the preventative side to the extent that we're able, but also should these things work its way through our respective legislator, we will be ready, to combat it on either front.
Absolutely. You wanted to add something to that, Ray?
No, Shekira covered it. That was it.
What happened?
No, I mean, she said, she covered it all. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund has been in communication with many of our community organizations. Obviously, we can't, put litigation into play until a law is passed, but we are starting to look at strategically what we need to do. Now, one of the things that's important is community members do need to provide as much public comment as possible, because those are things that we can utilize in said litigation if and once these bills are passed, to make sure that there's documented groups that would be impacted by these laws if they're passed, and make sure that they understand that there were people that actually utilized a lot of these things in the last election cycle, and so that they would be harmed as a result. Like, I know people that had to utilize 24 hours voting cycle because maybe they work a certain shift. Some of our healthcare workers, depending on what's going on with them, they may need to go at a later hour. And so those are the people that are being impacted by this.
Yeah, can I add just one thing real quick on the litigation piece? I mean, litigation is important. We certainly believe in it. We actually just filed today in Florida. As soon as the governor there signed their voter suppression bill, our attorneys were filing. So we believe in litigation. The key thing, though, is this: for everybody listening, once you hear that a lawsuit's been filed, that's not a signal to then sit back and say, okay, that the courts will take care of that, right? We always need a combination of strategies. The legal strategy has got to work with an organizing strategy. And so even if you hear that about the litigation, that still means that we still got to organize, we still got to get connected, we still got to maybe hit the streets and make phone calls and send text messages. Those strategies have to work together.
We got to put in the groundwork. I feel you, Cliff. Thank you for that too. And can we talk about corporate accountability, guys? Similar to what's happening in Georgia, right? Whoever wants to take the lead on this one, go ahead and feel free. Just explain a little more so people can understand what exactly is corporate accountability.
Yeah, I'll kind of set the table and let Cliff take over, because I know that's his wheelhouse. But essentially, you have corporations that make contributions to members, and typically this is in alignment with their business interests. And where this comes into play is some of these corporations are contributing to members that are sponsoring these bills that will then ultimately suppress the vote. So maybe they didn't say, hey, we're writing a check to directly suppress the vote, but their contributions are helping to empower these individuals to put these bills forward.
Yeah, no, I think Ray hit it right on the head, right? That they're not just, these corporations aren't just innocent bystanders. They're not just being quiet, but they're actually complicit in the voter suppression, whether directly or indirectly. And so we're demanding, all these organizations are demanding that they be accountable to the community, to their employees, to their consumers, right? That they be accountable. They be accountable to the very voters and the very community members that make this democracy possible, that lets them make the profits that they make on a daily basis. So we're demanding that they be accountable, and we're calling them out on social media, and again, by phone call or whatever it takes. In some cases, going to their offices. There've been a couple of demonstrations at AT&T offices in Dallas and Houston, in Beaumont, and other places. And so, yeah, that's what the corporate accountability is all about. They got to do their share to protect the voters in this community.
And Cliff, you're all fired up. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, even our mayor, Mayor Turner, and Judge Hidalgo, I think it was yesterday, they both decided not to partner with the Greater Houston Partnership, which is our largest coalitions of businesses here in the city of Houston, because they have been silent, and they're basically just playing the middle and have not come out with a direct statement speaking out against the voter suppression. They today, I think, provided a statement saying that, they have a board and different protocols that they have to go through, which, with any organization is understandable. But at the end of the day, I think we all know it's kind of just a cop out for them to kind of play in the middle so that they don't have to come out and, choose a side. And, voting rights is not political. We're in an environment now where people try to politicize certain things because the political community is very polarized in the United States. Because of the last administration, primarily, that we just had. Voting is just a basic right that when you look at Black people, God rest John Lewis, we've been fighting for and have won for a long time. We're not just going to let it be taken away.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, and what Ray said was extremely, powerful for the two chief executive officers of our county and of our city to stand up and say, this is wrong, right? And hold the business community accountable for not being a voice, right? For our community, right? Essentially, every year there's a state of the county and there's a state of the city, right? To address the business community and the health and of what's going on, within the business community in the city of Houston and in Harris County. And so essentially the mayor and Mayor Sylvester Turner and Judge Lena Hidalgo said, hey, we will not be present, right? We will not support you until you speak up for the individuals that you represent. Basically, these corporations and businesses under the umbrella of the Greater Houston Partnership have the collective power and influence to do something about this. And so their defeating silence is incredibly detrimental and impacts our community. And so that's the connecting point, there. And it's just like equally important to just think about those 175 plus business leaders who did say, you know what, this is wrong, right? And put out, a joint letter, lending their names, right? Lending their business names, right? In their individual capacities. And I was watching Ambassador Ron Kirk, on CNN not long ago, and he was just saying, look, I'm at the top of this letter, right? I too, believe that this is fundamentally wrong. And so we've got to continue to have these conversations in the business community. The work that Cliff is leading with Black Voters Matter around corporate accountability at the table that's happening here in Texas is incredibly powerful. And I don't want that, to fall upon deaf ears, because there is a role for the business community to play.
So why do you guys, this might be a bit of a more broad question, but why do you guys think that this is happening across our country? And why, at this time? Tell the truth. This is the truth about.
You want to take that one?
I mean, I'll say three words, first two, white supremacy, and the third word is power. And that's what this is fundamentally about, that this is their desperate attempts to hold on to power, even as they know that their numbers are decreasing and our numbers are growing, and not just our numbers in the population, but our registration efforts, our participation, our turnout, all of that is growing. And this is their effort. Power concedes nothing without a demand, and we're making the demands, and they're trying to hold on to power. And of course, all of this was really spurred on. I think Ray talked about it a little while ago, by the former occupant of the White House and his big lie, that there's some kind of rampant fraud running through the country. When in fact, we know that fraud doesn't exist, and to whatever extent it does exist, it's their folks, right? Like the lieutenant governor of Texas put out a call talking about $1 million bounty or reward for anybody that can find the fraud. And the lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania found it, but it was three Trump people who had committed fraud to vote for Trump, right? And so he's trying to get his $1 million reward from Texas Lieutenant Governor Patrick. And so that's what it's all about. It's really that simple. It's white supremacy and its power. They were scared. That's why so much of this was targeted towards Harris County and towards Houston. They see the numbers. They see the turnout that came through the 24-hour voting, the vote by mail, the voting in your car and all that, and it's scaring them to death. And again, that's why they cheat.
And Jess, and as Cliff mentioned, like one of the key provisions, in that bill, and also Ray touched on this earlier, is that where voting centers, whereas many of them are located, centrally within the bounds of the city of Houston, which is, has heavy concentration of Black and Latino voters, right? So that's intentional, right? When you're making it more difficult for someone, to access the ballot box, right? That is essentially base level voter suppression, right? When you loosen restrictions on poll watchers so that they can do whatever it is that they desire to do to intimidate voters from participating in this process. When you reduce or when you do away with innovative means of allowing folk to vote in a more convenient manner, that is voter suppression. And so these laws are express, right, in their intent. And I know there's a lot of folks out there, let's break this down. There's not much to break down here, right? The reality is this is totally impacting our community. It is targeted toward our community. And I think that we're doing everything within our power in collaboration with grassroots organizations and advocacy groups, elected leadership and business leaders to combat this. But it's just incredibly unfortunate that on the heels of us supposed to be celebrating our increased participation in this process, we're having to combat ridiculous, legislative movements by individuals who should be addressing more pressing issues in our state, like healthcare, right? Education, criminal justice, right? There's plenty to do and plenty to tackle, right? Impeding on our fundamental right to vote should not be one of them.
Yes, and Jazz, that's probably the most frustrating thing what Shekira just mentioned is that there's so many things that our community needs, but we're sitting there having to deal with something like this when we could be focusing. We're like, remember Storm Uri, in ERCOT, we should be focused on making sure that doesn't happen again, that people aren't dying because we lose power, because we chose to privatize our power grid, again, choosing profits over people. And we see that consistently time and time again. And I think when you look across the country, the Brennan Center for Justice, I think when I last checked, there were 47 states that had instituted, put forth some type of suppressive voter bill. And I think in total, it was about 341, and 49 of those were submitted in the state of Texas. We were the top state to voter suppression bills. And, I love where I'm from, but this does not make me proud to be a Texan. As a native Houstonian, born and raised here in Third Ward, and not to mention, as we approach the anniversary of George Floyd. And so, a lot of these companies, going back to their corporate accountability, issued these statements. They said, we wanted to do X, Y, Z for Black people. We see there's, but then at the same time, you're contributing to something that would directly impact the community you said you wanted to help. So, at the end of the day, which one is it? And, it's definitely about power. When you look at Georgia, what our sister Stacey Abrams was able to do, and they have passed one of the most suppressive voter bills in the country, directly targeting, souls to the polls out there in Georgia, prohibiting people from giving them water and whatnot while they're in line. Like, just, think about the type of person that would do that. These are not good people that are suggesting these things, because again, what's the purpose? You would think you would want to make it more accessible. I have people in the community all the time ask me, why don't we have online voting or voter registration or automatic voter registration? The reason is because they don't want you to vote. And so when people try to act like your vote doesn't matter, if it didn't matter, why would they be doing this all over the state of Texas? Oh, excuse me, all over the country and here in the state of Texas? It's about power.
Right. So, okay, what do you guys think would be the impact if these bills are passed? Do you think we will see something immediately? And also having a double question, like when would the bill, if they are passed or are not passed, like is there a date that's going to be decided on?
September 1, like all bills will go into effect on September 1.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's a couple of ways to answer that question about what the impact will be, right? Because we know what the intended impact will be,
Yeah.
but there's a very real possibility. I know the folks who are having this discussion are going to do everything in our power to make sure that it doesn't have the impact that they intended to have, and in fact, it could have the opposite impact. We talked about Georgia in 2018. A lot of people asked us after we literally saw an election stolen from Stacey Abrams, right? People said, "Oh my God, how are you going to get black folks to come back out? We had such good turnout in 2018, and they cheated and all that. What's going to happen in 2020?" Well, we went and showed you what could happen in 2020, right? Black folks took that pain, took that anger, right? Took that information. We outworked them. We outorganized. We had even bigger turnout, and we flipped the state. I believe that the same thing can happen in Texas, that if they pass this, that what we're going to do is we're going to work a little more harder, right? We're going to get a little more folks to come out, and we're going to break the records again in terms of turnout and change the state of Texas and flip the state of Texas. That's what I believe can happen. Now, with that said, and this is important because you got some folks that will then say, "Oh, well, if it's not going to have an impact, then it didn't really mean anything, right? Then it wasn't that bad. The criminalization and the poll watchers and all that stuff couldn't have been that bad if you turn out." In other words, they use our success against us to try to make it seem like the voter suppression wasn't wrong to begin with. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we overcome the racism. It doesn't matter if we overcome the voter suppression. We shouldn't have to work that hard. Because like Ray said, the extra energy that we put out into having to do that extra work, that extra registration, that extra explaining to folks what this new law means, all that extra work is stuff that we could have been putting into dealing with our kids' education and dealing with our housing and dealing with our jobs and dealing with, like Ray said, dealing with the infrastructure so that folks aren't having a water emergency, right? And folks aren't dying when there's a snowstorm. That's where we want our energy to go, building the kind of society that we really want to envision, not fighting for some stuff that should have been ours, not just decades ago, but literally centuries ago.
Come on, Cliff. You hit the nail on the head. There you go, right there. And so, okay, do you guys think that they're proposing, do you think that the reason why these bills are being proposed in Texas is because they're afraid that we will flip the state blue? The whole state.
I mean, we wouldn't be having an organic, conversation about this if there was not a direct, connection to our political participation and representation right in our state legislature and changing the face of power, across the state of Texas, right? We had record voter turnout numbers in 2020 for the presidential cycle. Right, we have active municipal elections, going on in various counties, right, with pretty good turnout, right? That's electing more people who look like us, right? And also we have upcoming statewide elections, in 22 that folks are really gearing up for, right? Anything that says that, hey, I'm going to impede progress when it comes to civic and political participation says that we don't welcome your participation and we do not honor the work that has been done in 2020. And we don't think that it deserves to be expanded. And that's incredibly detrimental and impactful to communities of color.
Yeah, Jazz, I think, Professor Kleinberg, he does a study with the city of Houston, and he continues to show and project how our city is changing. We're currently the most diverse city in the country, and they are saying that I think by 2040 or maybe 2050, the rest of the country is going to be like Houston. It's going to be majority minority. And so, it's definitely, I think, a case where you have old white men in power. They are afraid, and they are going to do everything they can to hold on to that power by any means necessary. And so, we're not going to be deterred. We are going to continue to fight back. We're going to register even more people to vote, and we will show up in even greater numbers, in this next election cycle. So that it's definitely, I think, a deterrent in trying to stop us from getting the same type of effects or outcomes we saw in Georgia, I should say.
Got you. And before we go, guys, and also thank you guys so much for being so truthful and honest and organic, like answering all the questions today. Like that's very appreciated. And you guys have made it very digestible. So thank y'all for that. And finally, before we wrap up, what would you say? Like we'll just kind of reflect on the entire combo. How will we move forward as a community, as a people? Like what are certain things that people can do? We'll just reflect on that one more last time.
I would just say, again, first and foremost, go on, Ray.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say, you can get deputized today. You know, we have online voter deputy, voter registrar training. You know, unfortunately, it is still required for you to be deputized to register people to vote. We are partnering with the NAACP to push those trainings and to make sure people are deputized, because we're going to need more people to help us register more people to vote. And so I think those two things are going to be at the core of our activities as it relates to the Urban League, and continuing to educate people, engage them, make sure they're informed so they can vote for what's best for their families and for their communities.
So I can get deputized online?
Yes, Jazz, I will send you the link. You can get deputized online. That was something that we pushed for, and it was granted. And it's also important to note that going back to that bill, I just remembered they're trying to remove some of the local controls. Some of the things that our local officials do to help us, they're trying to stop them from being able to do
that. That's horrible. Anybody else want to add anything else to the convo before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, as mentioned, like Cliff mentioned, like, hey, don't just wait until the litigation happens and say, okay, Black Voters Matter got it, or National Urban League got it, or Shekira got it, because we need everyone to be involved in this process, right? The community education component, right? Sharing what this actually means and how it impacts us is step one, and also remaining activated, right? Just because we have a part-time legislator, right, doesn't mean that we cannot continue to contact our legislators and engage them on this very important issue. And so I say we remain, I'm in a posture of activity, right, and wanting to be activated and sharing within our respective spheres of influence what's going on. So this is dinner table conversations. We've got to like keep this conversation localized, you know, as well, and continue to work with partners that are going to amplify, you know, our message. We can't just say, okay, HB 6 and SB 7 passed, guess we got to deal with it. No, we've always got to remain activated, engaged, and prepared to share information, because there's many folks who aren't on this broadcast tonight, folks who aren't following, who haven't kept up, that quite frankly, we need their voices, right? We need them to speak up. We need them to make phone calls. We need them to talk to folks in their community about the impacts of this harmful legislation.
Absolutely. Final word, Cliff. Leave us on the cliff with something good. I want to not do it again as the last one.
Well, no, I mean, what I was going to say is I know Jazz is about to be a voter registration beast after she gets deputized. I mean, it's about to be on and popping. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, but I mean, I can't really add on to what Shekira and Ray have said, you know, except again, just to say, believe, you know, that we believe in yourself, believe in your power to change your community, believe in our collective power. We got to believe in each other, right? Everybody's got a role to play up in this piece. Everybody's got a role, something that they can contribute. You know, maybe you're the phone caller, maybe you're the texter, maybe you're the person that's really good at knocking door to door. Maybe you're the person who's really good at cooking and you're going to make the food that's going to be at a lot of these community events. Maybe you're the graphic artist, right, who's going to create some of the beautiful artwork that's going to keep people excited and motivated and believing in themselves. Everybody's got a role to play. If all you can do is just tell 5 other friends, like if you're listening to this right now, tell 5 people about this broadcast and this discussion that you saw, and share that. If everybody listening does it and they tell 5 friends, and then those people tell 5 friends, guess what? They can't stop us. There is no voter suppression in the world that can stop us when we believe in ourselves, when we believe in our power, and when we work together. Because as we always say, when we work together, we win. Period.
Thank you so much. Final words. And look, everybody has a role that is very important. Everybody has a role. If you're watching this right now, you have a role. And listen, after this live stream is over, make sure you share the link, put it on your Facebook page, send it to your mom, your sister, your brother, your granny, whoever, somebody at work that needs to hear it, anybody, because we all really do need to stay involved and play our role. So thank you guys all so much for tapping in for the truth about politics. I appreciate y'all so much. And I look forward to hopefully doing this again too.
Thanks, Jazz.
Thank you guys
All right,
so
y'all.
much. Have a great weekend.